I'll see you guys later when I finish my playthrough of Serious Sam. Well, that didn't pan out like I hoped. For a good while now, I've been taking the time to try and figure out how I even want to frame this video, because in my head this is supposed to be a challenge run. Here's the thing though, the last one of these I did was a New Vegas door randomizer, and that was pretty straightforward. It wasn't a challenge run, it was more or less a typical playthrough summary, but here, there was a limitation, there was a requirement. But what do you call a challenge run that doesn't have challenge? This is Feraligatr. He is my son, and I love him. I wanted to do a solo run with this blue alligator crocodile thing in the sense that he's the only one allowed to do damage. Other Pokemon to use HMs are fine because, realistically speaking, I can't have a single Pokemon doing all of the work. Show me the starter Pokemon that can learn every single HM because I'd love to see which one it is and I'm too lazy to look for it myself. I didn't think it would be anything that crazy, and for all I knew, I might run into some genuine issues along the way. No. No, I didn't. As I get through this gobbledygook with Professor Oak, I just want to let you know that I mostly played this game in the afternoon after I got home from work and from doing things on the weekends, so if you wonder why a bunch of the in-game footage takes place at night, this is why. The game started off simple, just like anything else you would expect in a Pokemon game. You go through all your standard stuff with talking to Mom, going around town, and meeting the Pokemon Professor like any other child being sent off into the woods to die. Professor Elm offered me 3 Pokemon as is tradition, and I picked Totodile because he's the best option out of any of the Johto starters, and anyone who says otherwise is a Cyndaquil fan or lying to you. You didn't pick Chikorita, you settled for Chikorita. I took a quick peep at my Pokemon stats, however this turned out to be extremely pointless to do, and you'll see why in a bit. I got my PDA from Mom, and the professor gave me his phone number before I started doing some training on my way to Cherry Grove City while getting ready to go meet Mr. Pokemon. Some of you may have noticed that my character sprite doesn't quite look okay, and seems to have this weird set of expanded pixels on top while outside. Trust me when I say that this is a warning sign I did not pick up on until it was far too late to do anything about it. This old man gave me his used shoes and a map, and I traveled north to go into what I thought was the correct house, and then into what actually was the correct house. Mr. Pokemon gave me an egg, while Professor Oak gave me the Pokedex, and Elm thought it would be a good idea to call a random child instead of the police over a break-in at the lab. The red-haired kid who was peeking through the window back home bumped into me and thought he could beat me with his Chikorita. By this point, Totodile was double the level, and I still had a hard time beating it despite this. Dumbass dropped his ID, and some brain-dead cop accused me of breaking into the lab when I was 2 miles away. When asked what the name of the guy who actually did the deed was, I decided he didn't deserve a cool name and gave him something stupid. I gave Elm his egg, and then the emulation proceeded to die entirely. As you can tell, we're off to a great start. I tried to run the game again, and there was some strange glitching, but it was otherwise running okay. I grabbed my gator, fixed my settings, got my meds, saved my game, left my phone at home before my universe got erased for the second time. Anyway, I goofed around with Melon's settings to get it to look pleasing. I had to work a little bit to try to get rid of this disgusting smoothing effect that everyone hates, but that will go away soon enough. In this universe, my Totodile has a bashful nature with good endurance as its trait, currently having 20 HP, attack and defense at 12, special attack and speed at 10, and special defense at 9 when picked up fresh from the lab. I did the whole 9 yards all over again and got to the Catch Pokemon tutorial that I've probably seen 100 times by this point in my life. Totodile made it again to level 10, and I was making my trek to Violet City while mopping the floor with the trainers on my way there. I also did some off-camera research into what Pokemon I would need to train on later, seeing what is worth attacking and what isn't to train certain stats. Once in Violet City, I tried to go to the gym immediately, but I was told that I needed to go to Sprout Tower first, where everyone inside has a Bellsprout and pretty much nothing else. As I climbed, I actually got concerned I'd have a problem because this is pretty much just a giant hallway of grass types, but since Totodile was double the average level of the Pokemon here, I wasn't entirely worried. You're gonna notice a theme throughout this video. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention I named the kid Burger because I couldn't think of anything funny. Once he sensed that I was breathing the same air as him, he used a rope to disappear from the tower. The last guy in the tower was no problem at all, and he proceeded to give me Flash. I was now tasked with trying to find a Pokemon that can use it so I don't waste any of Totodile's moves. This is why HM slaves exist. I'm positive most of you watching this have played at least one Pokemon game, but on the off chance you haven't, HMs are moves that are used outside of battle and cannot be unlearned through normal methods like learning other moves as you level up. They're stuck to that Pokemon until you can find the guy who can forcibly make Pokemon unlearn moves. An HM slave is a Pokemon whose sole purpose is to learn HM moves so Pokemon you actually want to use don't have wasted slots. This is not to say that all HMs are wasted moves though, as some moves like Surf are useful in double battles for instance. I captured a Bellsprout after a quick waterboarding session to teach it Flash and went to get the first gym badge. I had a suspicion that Falconer imported his Pidgey from Kanto because it immediately started spamming Sand Attack like the ones in my Nuzlocke from a few years back. Luckily I had an X accuracy in my back pocket to counter that nonsense. Pidgey did go down, but his Pidgeotto however proved to be a serious issue since luck was not on my side in this fight. Crits nearly took out my Totodile, and the potions I was using were doing nothing but delay the inevitable since my attacks kept missing. Once I realized it was a losing effort when I got the HP to near death and it restored its health using Roost, Totodile fainted and I had to throw out Bellsprout. This will be the first of a couple of problems that were easily resolved. Totodile is down, and we can't just leave the battle. Now what? Simple. Totodile is the only one allowed to do damage, so two options. 1. Use attacks that don't do damage, and 2. Throw Pokeballs to skip turns. In a way you could think of it like having a tantrum over losing, so you just chuck a Pokeball at high speed at the gym leader's head. I got sent packing to Nurse Joy, took a brief detour to school with the help of a Kalos native, and went back to the gym for round 2. This time, Totodile damn near killed the thing in one shot and made it to level 16 after knocking it out. Pidgeotto was throwing Gust around, so I spammed Rage for the damage boost with consecutive use. It also started spamming Rooster this time, so after a quick scary face to slow it down, it went down in 2 bites. With this, I got my hands on the Zephyr badge, and Elm called me to pick up some eggs. I found a free range potion in some cave, healed in Cherry Grove, and tried looking for Sentrets. It was nighttime and I had completely forgotten that Sentret do not spawn at night, so this was a complete waste of time. Sudowoodo is a Pokemon that exists, the puzzle in the ruins of Elf broke my brain for a few moments, and the kimono lady told me I had a nice egg, while this guy gave me a funny looking seed. A fisherman showed me his rod, and another his balls, and I found out Faulkner sent a f***ing hitman after me. He was no problem. Inside Union Cave, I found some drugs on the floor, presumably from one of the trainers inside. The Pokemon here are good for training defense, so battling everyone isn't a total waste of time. As I made my way through the cave, Totodile evolved into Croconaw. I picked some apricorns and found out that Team Rocket not only still exists, but they're also giving the people in Azalea Town a very hard time. I spoke to the apricorn guy, fell down a well, and battled the grunts inside. Every single one of them went down easy, same for the Rocket Leader, and it was beginning to dawn on me what the rest of this game was going to be like. The guy offered to make me some Pokeballs, so I gave him some of the apricorn I had laying around and never went back for them. Burger didn't like that at all, so he showed up to steal my wallet. His ghastly cursed Croconaw while his Bayleaf poisoned him. At that point, I was more than done for, so trying to heal was a wasted effort. I let him and Bellsprout go down, gave him money for the bus, and healed up before running into the bug-type gym. The trainers here put up a surprisingly decent fight, but otherwise were not that difficult to get past. Croconaw learned Ice Fang at level 21, which was a pretty good replacement for Bite in my honest opinion. And I'm not gonna lie, up to this point I totally forgot double battles were a thing, and I got blindsided running into my first one. Once again, Croconaw is the only one allowed to attack. Using specific moves and throwing Pokeballs to skip turns is the name of the game. As long as my second Pokemon doesn't do anything to actually cause harm to the opponent, it's a fair thing to do. Pokeballs bought time while Croconaw got to work on the other team. Once they were out of my way, I had to deal with Bugsy. He chose Violence and threw Scyther down out of the gate, only to immediately pull him back and throw a Metapod instead, which went down fast. Scyther came out again, which put up a small fight before I had to put Kakuna in its place. With Kakuna frozen and out of the way, it eventually had nowhere to run, and the Hive badge was in my hands. And now we begin my least favorite and most talky part of the video. Allow me to explain what I mean while Croconaw commits mass murder. In Pokemon, there's several pieces of information that determine a Pokemon's stats: effort values, individual values, nature, and characteristics. These mechanics have changed slightly over time, so just to be clear, we're speaking in terms of how they are in the 4th generation of games specifically. IVs and characteristics go hand in hand with each other. IVs are fixed numbers that are generated whenever a Pokemon is encountered at any point. These influence how a Pokemon's stats are calculated, along with the other pieces of information I just mentioned. A characteristic gives you a vague idea of how good a Pokemon's IVs are. According to Bulbapedia, a random sentence is given depending on the highest value IV that a Pokemon has, but the sentence given doesn't determine the actual numeric value. It's intentionally vague. You could go out of your way to get a Pokemon that's known to be overpowered to high heaven, but their highest IV might not even be in the double digits. I mentioned earlier that Totodile had good endurance. This means the highest IV it has is in defense. This doesn't necessarily mean that I have a high value on it, as it could be anywhere from 3 to 28. Thankfully, I was fortunate enough to be able to find out that my Totodile has an IV of 18 in both defense and special attack. When factored in with its base stats, which Totodile and by extension the rest of its evolutionary line are naturally stacked at attack and defense, I would consider this a generally good thing. Not so much special attack, which has a base of 44, making it the second worst stat, but this just means it shouldn't lag behind as much as it normally would. Nature just tells you what positives or negatives a Pokemon will have in terms of their stats. Every stat, save for HP, has a nature that's going to affect it in some way. Most natures provide a 10% boost to one stat while causing a 10% decrease to another. I bring this up because Croconaw was blessed with Bashful, which is one of said natures to do nothing at all. This is both good and bad because none of his stats are being held back by nature, but none of his stats are being helped by it either. To explain how I know the exact IV values of my Pokemon without that information being clear in the game, I used PK Hex, specifically the 2024-0505 build that was the latest available at the time I started the run. For all intents and purposes, this is a save editor with a focus on the Pokemon themselves. For my purposes, however, this is purely for keeping track of Croconaw's effort values and knowing what his IVs are, so I can train him to the best of my ability. EVs are obtained whenever you defeat a Pokemon in battle up to a maximum of 255 per stat and up to 510 EVs across all stats. Different Pokemon give out different EVs, and every 4 EVs you get adds 1 point to a stat. EV training is attacking specific Pokemon to invest in the EVs that you want to boost stats in. This is why I mentioned hunting for Pokemon like Sentret and why the Pokemon in Union Cave were helpful. Sentret gives you 1 EV for attack, and Pokemon like Onix, Sandshrew, and Geodude give you 1 EV for defense. In a team of 6 Pokemon with everything properly EV trained, it's perfect if you want to steamroll people in online battles or the competitive scene. The problem is we don't have 6 Pokemon here, we have 1, and he looks like this when faced directly. Since we only have 1 Pokemon to work with, it's very important to know what stats we want to invest into and to avoid optional battles as much as reasonably possible so we can EV train to the best of our ability. And now the part where I admit I fucked up. I originally thought that I needed to progress the game somewhat since I didn't have enough badges and wasted some EVs during the game, but as it turns out this only applies to traded Pokemon, so that's on me. I did not do enough research on how the badges work. By this point in the run, I wanted to invest primarily in defense and attack, and in case anyone heavily into comp Pokemon battling is shaking their heads so much they're registering magnitude 7 on the Richter scale, I formed my plan around Totodile's natural strengths. At the end of the day, in my personal opinion, the best way to play Pokemon is just to go with the flow. Understanding certain things can be very helpful in getting better at the game and improving your team, but I've always had the most fun playing these games using the Pokemon I personally liked, and playing with the team I wanted to use. I didn't pick Totodile for his stats, I picked Totodile because I love this stupid blue gator beast. He's my favorite starter of any Pokemon game, period. I didn't even know he was stacked like this until I started this video. I'm not going to speak on how you should EV train because I'm not a competitive Pokemon player by any means. There's a non-zero chance I could get something wrong, and I bet good money I messed up something here as well. Do your own research and get an opinion from someone who has actually done this enough to know what they're talking about. I'm just an idiot who likes to torture himself on the internet for YouTube clicks. Now that I've spent enough time talking about this nerd garbage, we ball. And by ball, I mean spend 4.5 real hours of my life grinding away attack and defense until they're at the amounts I wanted them to be at, not counting the moment I fell asleep in the middle of recording. By the time I was finished and my EVs for Crocodile looked like this, I was at level 29 and attacking Pokemon for the purpose of leveling up, since now I can battle at will with no issues. At some point I ripped Burger to shreds and made it into Ilex Forest to help some idiot catch his birds. He gave me Cut, and I taught it to Bellsprout. Crocodile led another kimono lady to her doom, and I beat up some dumb kids' army of small animals. The daycare is a place I could get to, the cops tried to arrest me, and Crocodile finally achieved his perfect form at level 30. While in Goldenrod, I got a reminder that Voltorb Flip is quite possibly the worst game ever conceived by man. I understand that slot machines can't be done for reasons relating to age ratings these days, but I'd happily take Gamble Core if it meant a slightly higher age rating for the games on the condition I never have to deal with Voltorb Flip again. The gym leader was out getting milk, so I answered a quiz to get a radio card for my Pokegear. Once the gym leader came back, it was populated by normal type trainers. It was a bit confusing to navigate, mostly because I wasn't paying attention. Whitney only has a Clefairy and a Miltank, both of which were pushovers, and I beat her so badly she started crying. I told her to give me my stupid badge, got my mugshot, and by this point every battle was basically a minor inconvenience. We're only 3 badges in, by the way. Feraligatr was at level 31, and most Pokemon I'm running into are barely into the double digits. I might as well have the game on autoplay at this point. The national park had no value to me. I went shopping, picked up garbage, briefly got lost, got the Squirtle watering can whatever, Sudowoodo jump scare, failed miserably in trying to catch it for fun, got some potted plants that allowed me to neglect a bunch of berries, and at some point Togepi hatched and tried to evolve, but I told it to shut up. I was starting to think that I probably should have done this video with Totodile specifically. Team Rocket was harassing someone at the local theater, so I killed him and got me the 1 HM that Feraligatr could actually make use of. Some loser at the gym threw me out, and some moron left their dogs inside of a burned out building. Burger was here too, by the way. The dogs ran away when I went to go pet them, and I started running the gauntlet through Ghost Heck. Every single trainer in the Ekritique gym has a small army of ghost Pokemon, like this is some kind of gym for ghost Pokemon. By the time I got to Morty, he also had his own collection of Pokemon from Ghastly's evolutionary line. He put up a decent fight, but the Fog badge was mine in no time at all. I'm gonna do my best to power through the rest of the gyms because I'm not gonna lie, this is why the thumbnail has the caption that it does. Gator Boy was at level 38 and he was starting to creep into the triple digit range in terms of his stats. I left the sick cow to die, Burger told me to get bent in a lighthouse, and I attacked every single swimmer I found in the water on the way to Cianwood. There's a fighting type gym here, the pharmacy sucks, and Isuine battled me over Suicune or something, so I sent his pretty boy ass to hell. The gym leader was under a waterfall, and if I didn't know any better, I would have guessed he was a water type gym. The gym leader's name is Chuck, and yeah, he definitely looks like one. His wife gave me flies, so I did the sensible thing and swam back to Olivine. I took the time to evolve Togepi into Togetic without battling, so I had a flying type ready to go and climbed up the lighthouse. As I went up, it occurred to me that the only way to get to the top floor should the door be locked where Ampharos is sitting is by jumping out of a window and falling at least 1 story. At the top, I was told to go back to Cianwood for meds, flew there, picked up some Fent, flew back, healed Ampharos, and this lady had the absolute nerve to fight me in the middle of a Pokemon Center. Jasmine has Steel-type Pokemon. Magnemite, slightly annoying. Steelix, pathetic. I now have the Mineral Badge. Checked out the map, got bumped by a man who gave me strength, caught a Machop just to use it. It broke out of an Ultra Ball, by the way, but a normal Pokeball caught it just fine. Since when was I playing Pokemon Go? Wandering through Mount Mortar let me attack every Pokemon that entered my path, and I eventually found Suicune again, realizing I could have just surfed past the mountain and avoided it entirely. Mahogany Town. The leader's not here. Definitely not Suspicious Market. Team Rocket took $10 from me. I mugged the locals to get my money back and had to deal with the red Gyarados, wasting a hilarious amount of time and balls trying to catch it. Side note, did anyone else have some stupid urban legend where you could increase the odds of catching Pokemon by holding certain buttons at certain times? For me, it was down on the D-pad and the A button. I still do that for good luck, even now. I didn't catch the Gyarados. Lance, in his infinite brilliance, decided to use Hyper Beam on a normal person in an enclosed space. Turns out Team Rocket had an entire base underneath the pharmacy. The Persian statues over here summon 2 rocket grunts whenever you walk in front of them. This gave me the time to really appreciate the Team Rocket battle theme, which is an actual banger by the way, and farm XP and money. One of the grunts I talked to said they planted explosives in the floor, proving that Team Rocket is willing to gruesomely murder a child with landmines if it means they can steal some kid's Pikachu. After meeting up with Lance deeper inside, the door to take this place down is voice activated, so I have to get the passwords from someone. Got one from one guy, got one from another, and this dude's ditto thought he could be him. Spoiler alert, he will never be him. Burger wasted even more of my time, and Rocket Executive Petrol really got put on this earth with that haircut. After having Feraligatr stomp his chest in, turns out we need his voice to open the doors. It's a good thing we have this conveniently placed Murkrow nearby to mimic his voice perfectly. Rocket Lady Ariana and some schmuck showed up to stop my fun, but Lance came to my side. This part was tricky as I wasn't sure how to treat this particular battle, but I decided that since I'm not the one controlling Lance's Pokemon, there's nothing I can do about what it does to the other team. Once Ariana and Co were out of the way, we got to work removing the electrodes to the building to kill the radio signal. He gave me Whirlpool as a reward for a job well done, I healed up and ran for the gym. This one is Ice type, and talking about it is a waste of breath. Spam Crunch and move on. The next day I forgot what the hell I'm supposed to do, and found out once I listened to the radio. Team Rocket has taken up residence in Goldenrod, so this is clearly a sign that I need to go play some more Voltorb Flip for some reason. Once inside Radio Disney, I was out of uniform and had to go get one in the tunnel underneath town. With fresh drip in hand, I went inside only for Burger to expose me like the moron he is and shove me into a battle. I was actually kind of regretting naming him that by this point, and by the time I wiped his team, he said he was gonna go bother Lance. Buena said that today's password was help, which genuinely made me laugh, and I had to make my way to the 5th floor to find the director. After fighting and climbing my way up there, turns out that Pretzel or whatever his name was waiting for me the whole time. After taking the time to remind him I'm him, he told me the real director was locked in a basement. I also got a phone call that would not leave me alone. Huey, we are in the middle of a crisis, leave me alone! The puzzle room in the basement just has some ordinary burglars down here for some reason, and after putting in the right door combo and beating up the last of the grunts, the real director gave me his special key, and I took a shortcut back up to the mall. After stocking up on healing items and Pokeballs, I started thinking that Team Rocket would genuinely do better at being a criminal organization if they expanded their Pokemon variety beyond what they normally use. Proton was another idiot that got in my way and isn't worth discussing. Ariana showed up for the second time, unable to fathom the fact that she lost. The last guy up here, Archer, was actually the hardest battle by far. Most of his Pokemon were pushing 40. Ooh. With his mons out of the way, the director gave me a cool looking feather so I can get Ho-Oh when the time comes. Sadly, I got ahead of myself and went to Ekritique like a moron thinking I could go there now. I wasted a lot of time climbing up the tower, only to be disappointed at the top. I have to go to Blackthorn. The last gym here is obviously dragon based, the floor puzzles were actually kinda neat, and the gym took no effort once again. Everything here was on par with the last guy working for Team Rocket. One poor bastard bragged about me only having a 1% chance of winning. That dude learned something that day. Claire was my last target. Her Gyarados and 2 Dragonairs were done quickly with Ice Fang. Our last Pokemon, Kingdra, scared the hell out of me when it used Hyper Beam. I thought it was good until it started to spam Smokescreen, but it soon went down as well. Unfortunately, Claire is an anagram for the word bitch because she refused to give me the badge and told me to go in the caves behind the gym, presumably in an attempt to get me killed. I taught Feraligatr Whirlpool for the time being because I wanted to get it over with. I got a free gift card from the old man of the cave, and the gym leader continued to be a sore loser before giving me the badge after they stopped crying. I now had the Elite Four to deal with. Except I didn't. Elm wanted me to pick up the Master Ball and told me there was something waiting for me in Ekritique. My memory was correct in that I now had to battle each of the Kimono girls and their Eevees. You'll be shocked to know that I remember losing the first time I battled them so many years ago. These days it wasn't so bad, mostly because I have a Gator on steroids. If anything, Jolteon was the only one to give me any real trouble. With that out of the way, I bought 100 Pokeballs because I thought it would be funny, and it's not like I can't afford not to by now, and waddled my way back up the tower a second time. At the top, Ho-Oh finally decided to show itself to me right as the afternoon turned into night. I really did not want to waste the Master Ball, but there was no way I was leaving without Ho-Oh. Chucking every single Pokeball I had on hand was my plan here, because I wanted to save the ball for something really worthless like a Rattata or something and make the obvious joke about using it on something I truly wanted. Unfortunately, Pokemon that battle too long have a tendency to run out of PP. This applies to wild Pokemon too. When a Pokemon starts using Struggle, that's a bad sign. Not wanting to risk it, I used the Master Ball to catch Ho-Oh for the sake of saying I did. I threw myself back to Newbark and started my trek towards Victory Road. I picked up a Seaking for the sake of not wasting another HM on Feraligatr, and used a rare candy to bring him up to level 62. Hey look, it's the Elite Four! I dropped off all my other Pokemon to ensure a fair fight and went inside. First guy up was Psychic-type trainer Will, 1 crunch on each, and that was it. Koga, Kanto's old poison gym leader, had some new tricks. His team wasn't as manageable. I got flashbacks to Muck spamming Minimize since I used to do the exact same thing in Pokemon X. His Venomoth and Crobat weren't that bad. Bruno's fighting types gave me a hard time, but he wasn't that hard to take out. Karen and her dark types, oddly enough, were a bit of a curveball. Her Umbreon was the hardest to get rid of, and it was her first Pokemon. Luckily, the rest of her team went down in one shot. Yes, I know I'm treating the Elite Four like a footnote, but trust me, there's a reason. Lance was the only one left to deal with. His Gyarados caused me a lot of trouble by pushing towards needing to heal very frequently. His first Dragonite wasn't that much of a threat. Hyper Beam didn't nearly do as much damage as I expected it to, and his second Dragonite was pretty much the same. His Aerodactyl slapped me with Thunderfang, but I returned the favor with Surf. His third Dragonite was a non-issue. Please see my previous statement about Team Rocket in regards to team variety. His team closed off with a Charizard, one kick in the teeth with Hydro Cannon, and the battle was over. Professor Oak and some pink-haired lady were trying to waste my time. He led me into the Batcave, stole my credit card info, I got in the Hall of Fame, and the credits rolled. I've been stagnant on video work, to say the least, and this video certainly did not help matters. In my head I was thinking, this is something I know I'm gonna have fun with. It's Pokemon. It's easier than Serious Sam. I don't care if it does well or not. I want to put something out that I know is not gonna make me tear my hair out. The thing is, it ended up being too simple. What do you call a challenge run that has no challenge? Is it still a challenge run? Like I said, I didn't feel right calling the Vegas door thing a challenge run because it was just a playthrough at heart. Every door just happened to be a dice roll on where you ended up. Here, there was a challenge, but the game turned out to feel like a normal playthrough. I went into this thinking, okay, I beat the base game, make the video, call it a night, and then I can get to playing Fallout London or whatever, and my memory clearly failed me regarding this game. Because I don't remember this game being non-stop steamrolls one after the other. Maybe it's my fault for not replaying the game for years. Maybe it's my EV training that ultimately made the game trivial. I had a Pokemon in the 50s just as other trainers were starting to get into the 30s. One of Lance's Dragonites in the Rocket HQ was level 40. So what do I do now? I want to leave this game feeling something resembling accomplishment, and running through the base game left me with nothing. Well, Kanto is still to the east, and there was one fight I spent a good while trying to beat for a long time before finally managing to do so and never playing the game again. I think I need to throw him off Mount Silver a second time. After waking up in my hometown, Elm gave me a boat ticket so I could flee the country. I briefly encountered Raikou and flew to Olivine so Oak could update my Pokédex and I could board the boat. I immediately got caught in some bullcrap where I have to find some stupid kid running around the boat. I reacted accordingly by mugging every single person on the ship for cash. In the bottom level, there's supposed to be a shift change, but the guy who needs to take the shift is missing. I found him sleeping in one of the cabins, and he tried to kill me after I woke him up. Exploring the engine room led me to the kid bothering the captain, who wanted to play hide and seek. The kid, not the captain, he has better things to do. After making landfall in Vermilion City, I wasted no time running into the gym, only to forget that this is the annoying gym with the switches you have to find back to back. The Pokemon here are pushing a bit past 40, and despite using electric types, weren't that hard to deal with. Surge in particular was not anything to sneeze at, but he had a few issues. His Raichu went down with a single Hydro Cannon. His first Electrode took a bit of time, but the second one was worse and he paralyzed me too. Electivire is a cool third evolution for Electabuzz. This has nothing to do with the battle at all, I just like Electivire, though in my personal opinion they should have given him a Magnezone instead of Magneton. Surge tried to hype himself up only to lose immediately, leaving me with the Thunder Badge. Fun fact I didn't know until this playthrough, if you try to start a double battle with less than 2 Pokemon that aren't fainted, the trainers will tell you to get more Pokemon and come back later. After burning off a revive so I can get some cash, I traveled north to Saffron for the gym up there. At this point I'm doing my best to get through the gyms because I genuinely did not want to play the game anymore. I wanted it to be over. Sabrina's Alakazam put up a good fight, but her other Pokemon aren't even worth mentioning in the slightest. After taking her soul, I pulled up to Cerulean City, went straight for the gym, but nobody was home. After battling everyone near the place formerly known as Nugget Bridge, I thought it was kind of funny how all the trainers are high level, but the wild Pokemon aren't. The Kanto power plant has since been renovated since the last time I was here, but it's missing a piece to function, with the thief being back somewhere in the city. The man responsible was a rocket grunt who hid inside the gym. A local man told me he ran towards the cape, and I found him hiding between some happy couple. After absolutely thrashing his sad excuse for a team, he told me where the part was in exchange for telling him Team Rocket was done for. Returned the piece, flew back to the city, ruined Misty's date, and got busy clearing out the gym. Misty herself I wouldn't call the biggest headache. Golduck went down in 2 crunches, Quagsire went down with 2 Ice Fangs, Lapras kept slowing me down with Sing, and rather than waste items, I ran out the clock taking the time to heal when needed. Starby was the most annoying out of all of them. Ice Beam spam drove me nuts as I kept getting frozen, but one single crunch was all I needed to take it down. With the Cascade badge in my pocket, I used Repels and Rock Tunnel to keep myself sane, ran into this laughing lunatic on Route 10, landed in Lavender Town, and battled fishermen further south before I stared into the eyes of one for way too long. The beatings continued due west as I found some dumbass with a level 65 Magikarp. The leveling among trainers in this area was weirdly inconsistent, with a bunch of them varying wildly. Suicune was here, another Ditto tried to impersonate me and got turned into an example, and I went to Fuchsia City's gym for the next badge. It's full of poison types, and Koga's daughter Janine is keeping that tradition intact. Her Pokemon provided no real challenge besides her Venomoth spamming Double Team. After taking her badge, I took stock on the badges before realizing I played through nearly the entire game without ever getting my hands on the bicycle. Once I fed my crippling addiction to Voltorb Flip, Feraligatr was at level 80 by this point, and I was trying to figure out where I was supposed to go next. I'm being serious when I say I genuinely forgot where I was supposed to go to continue the game. I soon found myself back in Cerulean to get busy catching Suicune. After messing up the red Gyarados, I was not going to leave without at least one special Pokemon caught in a basic ball you could find at the dollar store. I spammed damn near every single Pokeball I had until the sun came up, and I somehow managed to successfully catch Suicune in a standard Pokeball against all odds. I always wanted to catch a legendary in something that wasn't an Ultra or Great Ball. I briefly flew back to Johto to get the 1 HM I neglected to grab, flew to Lavender Town to get the Kanto radio module, paid my respects at the cemetery, went shopping, woke Snorlax up, failed to catch it for laughs, scrambled my way through the cave that may or may not be full of Diglett, ended up in Viridian City, and the gym leader is not here because why the f would they? Went south to Pallet Town, read the professor's private emails, and ended up at what's left of Cinnabar Island. Blue is here, but he won't even look at me unless I have the other Kanto badges, which means I have to find out where Blaine is hiding. The man, known for fire, has relocated to the Seafoam Islands, an area known for ice. I will not question his decisions as he is the gym leader, not me. And I realized I was in for the fight of my life when Blaine revealed he finally bought a hat. Evidently, this ate into his gym budget because he only has 3 Pokemon. None of them are worth talking about, but I have the Volcano badge now. The bugs of Viridian Forest exist, and I made Brock into gravel when I finally got to Pewter City, despite the fact that he had a Kabutops which caught me off guard. I left with the Boulder badge in my hands and told Blue to get the f*** back to Viridian. My man really gutted a DDR cabinet in his gym and called it a puzzle. There's arrow tiles everywhere on this damn floor, and it's your job to find the right path. This gym has no coherence. You fight with what you have, and Blue didn't put up that much of one anyway. I seemingly blacked out again in the middle of fighting, but woke up early enough to finish the battle and shut the game off. I seem to be sleeping a lot during games lately. After Professor Oak told me to go climb a mountain and die, I flew to Indigo to heal before going back to Celadon. I had 500 stacks burning a hole the size of a basketball in my pocket, and I needed to stock up on anything and everything. Once at Mount Silver, I began to work my way up the mountain, taking special care not to waste too much time as Feraligatr was level 85, going on 86, using a cleanse tag to make traversing a tiny bit easier. Once inside the mountain proper, I got to work. Mount Silver is basically a series of elevations you have to find your right path through with tons of grass full of Pokemon to waste your time. Finding the right path early on is a matter of trial and error, but the same can be said for any multipath area in this game. Some of these paths are long and windy, so you can rip a few Pokemon apart for easy XP. When you start seeing snow, you're almost at the end. I found some loose candy in the grass, and soon found myself on top of the mountain. I made sure Feraligatr was race ready by giving him a quick claw after saving the game, and approached Red, prepared to send him running back home. Only for the man to make me look like a chump. I realized I was with a capital F when the first thing he pulled out was a level 88 Pikachu, an electric type that is 2 levels higher than Feraligatr. On top of it hailing, allowed one single Volt Tackle to send my boy straight to God, same day delivery. Stalling for time was the only thing I could really do while trying to heal Feraligatr. Since Pikachu was much faster and the Quick Claw refused to kick in, he went down in one hit on most occasions. After finally landing a Hydro Cannon, his next Pokemon was Venusaur. Of course it was a grass type that was next, and of course the one Sludge Bomb it used landed a crit. There was no way I was reviving my cannon fodder to do this, so I tried to get as far as possible with one Pokemon being able to do anything. Landing 2 Ice Fangs was enough to finish the job and make him bring out Blastoise. Focus Blast did a scary amount of damage, but it wasn't enough. I wasted no time using a Hyper Potion and used Crunch whenever possible. The Hail thankfully was able to take it out. The final Pokemon he threw out at me was Snorlax. Hydro Cannon didn't do much to start, and it started throwing Shadow Ball at me, lowering special defense in the process. After Feraligatr went down one more time, I realized I had run out of revives. The battle was over on a technicality. I let him whittle down what was left of my team into nothing, gave him my lunch money, and left to the Pokemon Center at the foot of the mountain. In my current state, if I want any hope of beating Red, I need to train Feraligatr as much as reasonably possible. After dropping 30 grand on revives and putting my HM slaves away for safekeeping, I walked through the doors of the Elite Four. Again, and again, and again, and again, for nearly 2 hours, constantly battling them and getting Feraligatr's level up as much as I felt was necessary. Winning or losing did not matter, so long as Feraligatr got the much needed experience. By the time I decided enough was enough, Feraligatr was at level 95. For anyone wondering why I didn't go to level 100, this is because I was doing it for 2 hours straight and I was starting to get bored. I wasted only a little bit of time going through the mountain and approached Red for the second time. Quick Claw's RNG powers were on my side this time, as Crunch nearly destroyed his Pikachu, but left me with paralysis. One Thunderbolt was all that was needed to do me in. Even while 7 levels above my opponent, Electricity can still destroy water types with ease. After sacrificing my first Meat Shield, his Venusaur did not handle Ice Fang very well, but it returned to the favor with Giga Drain. Meat Shield 2 took a Sludge Bomb while the second Ice Fang did him in. I threw down a Hyper Potion for the sake of safety while his Blastoise missed their attack. The two were pretty damn close in terms of overall strength, as this was the hardest Pokemon to deal with, even while they were continuously spamming Focus Blast. I gave Feraligatr a pick-me-up to boost its attack and gave it the edge it needed to get rid of his Blastoise for good. In a twist, he sent out Lapras. One Blizzard was enough to freeze us, but it was nothing a full restore couldn't handle. It then landed on a crit to knock him out once more. Lapras, being an ice type, is also unaffected by the hail, so I can't even hope for the minimal damage it causes. I took the time to top off Feraligatr's health while sending Oddish to meet his maker. My Crunch was countered with Psychic multiple times, only for Lapras to finally go down. Snorlax was the sign of the home stretch. Shadow Ball somehow wasn't an issue this time. I threw an Ice Fang and they landed a crit with one of their moves because this game hates me. My Hail Mary Hydro Cannon didn't work as expected, and Giga Impact left them at a light breeze away from failure. This fat bastard gave me a hard time, but despite everything it threw at me, Snorlax finally fell and his last Pokemon was a simple Charizard. I healed Feraligatr to full health and sent him out for the final time. Even though this Charizard made him flinch with Air Slash, one Hydro Cannon was all that was needed to finish the fight. Red had absolutely no words for me. He vanished from this world as the game saved and the credits rolled for the final time, and I beat Pokemon Heartgold attacking with only the starter Pokemon. Thank you for watching, please leave a like and your thoughts in the comments below, and be sure to subscribe for future videos. If you want to see my past runs, check out the challenge runs playlist linked on screen. Follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Blue Sky, links to each in the description below. I'm Mr. Max, I'll see you next time.